Marcus stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest as the cold, sterile walls of the hospital room seemed to close in on him. He had expected many things: disappointment, sorrow, even anger. But nothing had prepared him for this. The nurse's words were still echoing in his mind, a cruel reminder of the truth he couldn't escape. Claire, the woman he had trusted more than anyone else, had betrayed him in the worst possible way. His mind reeled as the doctor stepped away, leaving him with the harsh reality of the situation. Claire had been with him through it all, the highs and the lows, the laughter and tears. But in the space of one fateful moment, she had chosen someone else. The man who had been Marcus's best friend, the one he had confided in for years, had crossed a line that could never be erased. What now? His mind could barely process the words as they bounced in his head, but one thing was certain: everything was about to change. Marcus's life had just fractured into pieces, and there was no telling how or if he would ever be able to piece them back together. Before the betrayal, Marcus's life had been a study in stability. He had a steady job as an architect, a comfortable home he had worked tirelessly to build, and a circle of friends he thought he could trust. But beneath the surface of his seemingly perfect life, there had always been a quiet undercurrent of uncertainty. The constant pressure to succeed weighed heavily on him. And though his career was thriving, his personal life had started to feel like an ever-elusive puzzle he couldn't quite complete. Claire had been the anchor he clung to. They had met years ago, and their friendship had quickly evolved into something deeper. Marcus trusted her with his deepest fears, his dreams, and the vulnerabilities he shared with no one else. She was his confidant, his closest companion, and the one person he believed would never let him down. Then there was Olivia. She had been Marcus's best friend for as long as he could remember. They had grown up together, shared every major milestone in life, and built a bond that was meant to last forever. Their friendship was rooted in years of loyalty, shared memories, and unspoken understanding. They had always had each other's backs, no matter what. But as life often shows, nothing stays constant forever. Marcus had no idea how or when things had begun to shift, but now, with the revelation of their betrayal, his world was spiraling into chaos. It happened on a Thursday night, the kind of night that Marcus would have once described as ordinary. But nothing was ordinary anymore. He had just come home from a long day at work, his mind preoccupied with blueprints and deadlines, when he found Claire waiting for him. Her expression was different, hesitant, almost guilty, but Marcus couldn't place why. They sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken words. "I need to tell you something," Claire said, her voice shaky. The hairs on the back of Marcus's neck stood up. There was something wrong, something off about the way she was avoiding his gaze. "Claire, what is it?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated for a moment longer before speaking, her words falling like stones into an already shattered pond. "I've been seeing someone else." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Marcus couldn't breathe. His mind raced, struggling to comprehend what she had just said. She hadn't been seeing someone else. She couldn't have. She was the one person he trusted, the one person he had never doubted. "Who?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. It was the one question he didn't want to ask because, deep down, he already felt the answer crawling under his skin. "I'm so sorry, Marcus," Claire whispered. "It's Olivia." The words hit him like a slap in the face. His stomach twisted into knots as confusion and rage collided within him. Olivia, his best friend, his lifelong confidant. How could she do this to him? How could they both? His thoughts began to spiral, and a mix of disbelief and fury consumed him. What had happened? How long had this been going on? The betrayal was unbearable, his trust shattered, his friendships broken beyond repair. Marcus had thought his bond with Olivia was unshakable, but now the person who had been there for him in every crisis had proven to be the one who would destroy him in the end. His mind could barely process the depth of the betrayal. All he could feel was the isolation creeping in, a painful reminder that the people he thought he knew, the people he thought he could trust, had both turned their backs on him in the worst possible way. The days following the betrayal were a blur. Marcus couldn't shake the weight of it, the confusion, the anger, the sense of betrayal gnawing at him every waking moment. For weeks, he shut himself off from the world, his friends, his family. But Claire, despite her own guilt and pain, refused to let him sink deeper into despair. One evening, as Marcus stared blankly out the window, Claire sat down beside him, her hand resting gently on his. She hadn't spoken much in the past few days, respecting his need for space, but now she spoke with quiet determination. "Marcus, I know it feels like everything's falling apart, but you can rebuild. I believe in you. I always have." Her words, though simple, were like a small spark in the darkness. Marcus turned to look at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. He wanted to push her away, to retreat further into his own pain, but something in her voice held him there. He realized then that he didn't want to stay lost forever. As much as it hurt, he couldn't keep living in the shadow of the betrayal. "I don't know how to start again," Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to do it all at once," Claire said, squeezing his hand. "One step at a time." It was a simple concept, but for the first time in weeks, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he couldn't undo what had happened, but he could choose to move forward. It wouldn't be easy, but it was a start. Marcus didn't know where to begin. The days had blurred together since the betrayal, and yet something about the quiet that filled his apartment pushed him to do something. Anything. Claire had offered her support, but Marcus knew that healing had to come from within. The world had moved on, but he was still trapped in the ruins of his past. One afternoon, after much deliberation, he signed up for a local woodworking class. It wasn't much, but it was something tangible he could focus on. Marcus had always been fascinated by the art of building, the way raw materials could be shaped into something useful, something beautiful. It was a far cry from his architect career, but it felt like the perfect escape from the noise in his head. The first few days were slow. His hands trembled as he worked the wood, the sharp edges and tools feeling foreign in his grip. There were moments when his mind wandered, when the anger and frustration surged back to the surface, but he pushed through, breathing deeply, focusing on the craft in front of him. As the weeks passed, Marcus began to see small successes. His first piece, a simple chair, was rough around the edges, but it was his. He could sit in it, feel the weight of his work, and for a brief moment the chaos inside him quieted. With every new project, he felt a little more at peace, a little more like himself. Each piece he built was a symbol of his own recovery, a testament to his resilience. But there were setbacks, too. Some days he would collapse into bed, overwhelmed by the emotional weight he carried. There were nights when he would question whether he was doing the right thing, whether he would ever truly heal. The urge to give up still lingered, but Claire's unwavering support was a constant reminder that healing wasn't about perfection. It was about progress. Through the steady rhythm of his work, Marcus learned how to breathe again. He began to realize that just like the furniture he crafted, he, too, was a work in progress. There were cracks, there were imperfections, but that didn't make him any less valuable. With time, he would be whole again. It wasn't easy, but every day he took another step forward. The road was long, and the scars would always remain, but Marcus was starting to understand that healing wasn't about erasing the past, it was about finding the strength to move beyond it. Marcus had come a long way from the broken man he had been. The healing process hadn't been linear, and there were still days when the weight of the past threatened to drag him down. But now, he had a new focus. His woodworking had become not just a hobby, but a passion, a way of building something tangible from the fragments of his life. More importantly, Claire and the kids had become his anchor. It wasn't just about rebuilding himself anymore, it was about rebuilding his life with them. As he worked on his pieces, Claire would often sit beside him, her presence a quiet support. She had forgiven him for his past mistakes, and now they were starting fresh, one piece at a time. The challenges, however, were far from over. Marcus still struggled with self-doubt. There were moments when he questioned whether he was doing enough, whether he was truly moving forward or just running from his pain. Financial pressures also began to weigh heavily on him. His woodworking business was slowly growing, but it wasn't enough to provide the stability he longed for. Yet, in the face of these challenges, Marcus found something he had been missing for a long time: his inner strength. He couldn't rely on others to fix his problems, but he could lean on them for support. With Claire by his side, their bond deepened. She encouraged him when he doubted himself and stood firm when the world seemed uncertain. Together, they faced the external struggles, the long nights of worrying about money, the constant pressure to provide. And yet, they were stronger for it. Though the road ahead was still fraught with obstacles, Marcus was no longer afraid to face them. His relationship with Claire had evolved into something deeper, more than just a second chance. It was a partnership, built on trust, understanding, and shared resilience. Marcus knew there would be more difficult days ahead, but now he had the strength to face them, one step at a time. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Marcus's phone buzzed, the familiar ringtone jarring against the peaceful hum of the day. He picked it up without much thought, but then his eyes froze on the screen. It was Olivia. His heart skipped a beat, the sudden rush of emotions, both foreign and familiar, flooding his chest. "Marcus, I need you. Please, I don't know who else to turn to." The message was short, but the desperation in her words was undeniable. Olivia, the woman who had once been his closest friend, had reached out after everything that had happened, after the betrayal, after the broken trust. Marcus stared at the screen, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. He had spent months rebuilding his life, piece by piece, with Claire and the kids. Every day felt like progress, small but steady steps forward. And yet, here was Olivia, asking for help, dragging him back into a past he had fought so hard to leave behind. What did she want? Was this an apology, or just another plea to manipulate him into fixing the mess she had created? Part of him, an old, loyal part, wanted to reach out, to offer her the help she was asking for. But another part of him, the part that had grown stronger and wiser through his struggles, knew that answering her call could unravel everything he had built. Should he help her? Should he be the friend she had once been to him, even after all she had done? The temptation to help was strong, but so was the need to protect the life he had fought for. His finger hovered over the screen, torn. He couldn't respond immediately, not yet. The decision would require more than just a snap judgment. It would need time, and even then, he wasn't sure what the right answer was. For now, he chose silence. The phone buzzed again. He set it down without looking, leaving both Olivia and his thoughts suspended in the air, unanswered. Days passed, and the silence between Marcus and Olivia lingered like a heavy fog. He went about his life, trying to shake off the tension her message had stirred. But the world had a way of reminding him that the past never truly stays in the past. It started with casual conversations with friends. At work, his colleagues whispered about Olivia's latest fall from grace. Rumors of her financial ruin were all over social media. She had lost her job, her house, and her reputation. The man she had turned to after the betrayal had abandoned her when he realized she wasn't the person he thought she was. It seemed like the walls were closing in on her, and the world she had carefully crafted had crumbled. Some of Marcus's friends expressed concern. "Have you heard what's happened to Olivia?" they asked. "It's like everything's falling apart for her. Doesn't it make you feel something?" At first, Marcus was surprised by how little sympathy he felt. For years, Olivia had been the person he leaned on, the one he trusted with his deepest secrets. But now, as he listened to the stories of her downfall, he realized that whatever bond they once shared had been broken beyond repair. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. Meanwhile, Marcus's life was steady, if not perfect. He had his woodworking, his home, and a growing sense of peace. His relationship with Claire was blossoming, their connection deepening as they navigated life's challenges together. Every step forward felt like an act of defiance against the betrayal, a reminder that he had rebuilt himself brick by brick. But Olivia's spiral still lingered in the back of his mind. He couldn't completely shut out the memories, the history they shared. The more he heard about her struggles, the more the question gnawed at him. Did he owe her anything? Could he offer forgiveness? Or was it better to let her face the consequences of her own actions? He wasn't sure. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let her pull him back into her chaos. Not again. It arrived late one evening. A letter slid through the mailbox. A final plea from the past. Marcus hesitated as he picked it up. It had been weeks since Olivia's message, and in the time since, he had moved forward with his life. But this letter, her words written in ink, pulled him back into the storm he had left behind. "Marcus," the letter began, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I can't undo the pain I've caused you. And I wouldn't blame you if you wanted nothing to do with me, but I need you to know how truly sorry I am. I made terrible choices, and I've lost everything because of them. The man I thought would be there for me turned out to be someone else, and now I'm alone. Please, if you can find it in your heart to forgive me, I would be forever grateful. I never wanted to hurt you, Marcus. I don't expect anything from you, but I just wanted to tell you the truth. I'm sorry." Marcus set the letter down slowly, his hands trembling slightly. A part of him wanted to reach out, to respond with the understanding he had gained through his own pain. But another part of him, stronger now, knew that forgiving her didn't mean welcoming her back into his life. Her apology, though sincere, couldn't erase the betrayal or the damage it had done. He read the letter again, and then again. The temptation to respond was there, but his decision had already been made. Olivia had made her choices, and now he had to make his. He folded the letter, placed it in the trash, and stood up. The past was behind him. The healing was his, and he wasn't going to let anyone take that from him. He didn't respond. The past was gone. It was time to move forward. The years had passed in a blur of growth and change. Marcus had let go of the anger, the pain, and the confusion that had once consumed him. The past still lingered in the corners of his mind, but it no longer held power over him. He had built something new from the wreckage, his life with Claire and the kids, a future he had never imagined would be possible. It was far from perfect, but it was his. The business he had started with woodworking had begun to take off. He spent long hours in the workshop, shaping raw wood into beautiful furniture, each piece more intricate than the last. His clients appreciated the care and passion he poured into his work, and soon he had a steady stream of orders. His small business, once a mere dream, had become a source of pride and stability. He no longer needed to prove himself to anyone except himself. With Claire by his side, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. They supported each other in ways he had never thought possible, their bond growing stronger every day. The kids, too, had become his source of joy and motivation, reminding him that there was always something worth fighting for. He had let go of the past, no longer weighed down by the ghosts of betrayal. In their place, there was hope, there was love, and there was the promise of a future that was his to create. Marcus was no longer the man who had been shattered by those he trusted. He was stronger now, more confident than ever before, ready to face whatever came next. One last message arrived from Olivia, but this time, Marcus didn't hesitate. The words were simple, a final attempt to rekindle what had once been. But Marcus had already made his decision. He had spent too long holding onto the past, too long wondering if there could be reconciliation. No more, he thought, as he read the message. He didn't need to respond, didn't need to look back. He had moved forward, and it was time to fully close that chapter. He realized he didn't need Olivia's approval or forgiveness to feel whole. The closure he had found wasn't about her, it was about him, the person he had become. Looking back on his journey, Marcus saw the incredible transformation he had undergone. He had rebuilt not just his business, but his life. Every scar, every setback had shaped him into someone capable of love, forgiveness, and strength. The road had been hard, but it had led him to the life he had now, a life of stability, love, and self-respect. He was ready for whatever the future held, knowing he was no longer defined by the betrayal. He had chosen a new path, and it was his to walk. The sun was setting over the small house where Marcus, Claire, and the kids now lived, casting a warm golden glow over their dinner table. Laughter filled the air as they passed around plates of food, a small but perfect family, their bond stronger than ever. Marcus felt a sense of peace settle over him as he watched Claire interact with the kids, their happiness a reflection of how far they had come. There were still moments when his past whispered to him, but it no longer held him back. He had found a way to build something better, something lasting, out of the wreckage of his former life. He had learned that healing didn't come from erasing the past. It came from living fully in the present, embracing the people who mattered most. As the night deepened and the house grew quiet, Marcus sat back and let out a long, contented sigh. His heart felt light, free from the burdens that had once weighed him down. The future no longer seemed uncertain or frightening. It was a promise, one filled with hope, growth, and endless possibilities. He glanced at Claire, her hand resting on his. With her by his side, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The past was gone. The future was his to create. And with that, Marcus knew his story was just beginning.